the highly anticipated series between the Astros and the Yankees. This was something that was really dating back to when we found out about the cheating allegations and then were confirmed in 2019. I think everyone had this series circled on their calendars, especially the series at Yankee Stadium. And unfortunately, due to COVID, the 2020 season, not only was there no fans, but the Yankees didn't even play the Astros. So this is the first time they had played fittingly at the stadium. Originally, when the 2020 schedule came out, it was supposed to be for September of last season, and instead it was May of this year. I kind of wish that it was a little bit later so there could have been more fans, but the fans that were there were extremely loud, booed like crazy, clever chants, everything that you would expect and more. And I was hoping to maybe go to the first game. It didn't happen, but definitely very, and I think, to my fellow Yankee fans, very proud to be a Yankee fan. And that's just not something that you would see around baseball. It's definitely specific to this team, and I think just the fact of what happened, and like at least for the Dodgers, who I'm sure have some angst, with the Astros for sure, they at least got their World Series. So I think it takes a little bit of the sting away, I'd have to think. For the Yankees, they're still searching for that. So I think there's still a lot of frustration, and the fact that it happened in 2017 and then 2019 again leads to this, and it ends up working out for the Yankees. It could have been a sweep. We'll talk about it. Would have loved for the sweep, but if you had told me going in the Yankees would take 2 out of 3, I would have absolutely signed up for it. May not have gone exactly the way I would have thought, but again, you win series, you take that all day long, and that's the key here. But let's go into how this series played out. And the first matchup was between Zack Greinke and Domingo Germán. And Zack Greinke has always notoriously been terrible at Yankee Stadium. And that would continue. He really seems like he is not someone that has the psyche and wherewithal to ever pitch in New York. This is why we've seen him, in Kansas City, Milwaukee, in California, Houston, Arizona. Just not someone that, I think would be successful in a Northeast environment. But in this one, as you'd expect, Higashioka would catch Domingo Germán. How it's been working out is Higashioka's been catching Cole, Kluber, and Germán, and then Sanchez has been behind the plate for Tyone and Montgomery. I would expect that to continue, but in this one, the Astros would jump out to the early lead. It would be a solo shot by Alex Bregman, and I think at that point, the fans were chanting "Fuck you, Bregman," something to that effect. And, give Bregman credit. He hits it out in the first inning, first at bat, to give the Astros a 1-0 lead. But the Yankees would have a great response immediately. DJ LeMahieu would single, and then Giancarlo Stanton just continues to mash. And I think altogether now, at the end of the series, he's on a 12-game hitting streak, but it's beyond the hitting streak. He's just hitting shots all over the field. And Stanton was easily the player of the series. I love what we're seeing from him. Just got to stay healthy. That's the key. And as long as he does that, he's going to be an impactful player. And I'm glad that he's in that 2 spot in the order. I think it makes a difference, and it's certainly helping his cause. And that Stanton home run would give the Yankees a 2-1 lead. And it wouldn't stop there. Judge would walk. Gio would single. Glaber would walk. And then, unfortunately, Frazier hits a double play that scores a run. So what could have been a really big inning ends up only with the Yankees up 3-1. Germán pitches a couple of scoreless innings. Greinke is able to kind of wiggle his way through 4 innings. It wasn't pretty, but he only would give up those 3 runs. So, and I guess give him credit for that. But in the 4th, Michael Brantley hits a leadoff homer. He's definitely someone who I have a lot of respect for, and someone who I've said numerous times I'd love to see in a Yankee uniform. But Brantley homers to cut the lead to 3-2. And then what else would happen? With 1 out, Yordan Alvarez would single, and then Yuli Gurriel would get an RBI double. This would be reviewed just to see whether it was a home run, and it wasn't. It went off the top of the wall. Clint, it's maybe a play that Clint could have made, but it wouldn't have been easy. It seemed like he was kind of attempting to rob a home run, and either way, it's an RBI double for Gurriel, and that makes it 3-3. So Herman ends up pitching 5 innings, gives up those 3 runs. Not a great outing, not a terrible outing. Bit of a mixed bag for Herman in this one. And then Lucas Licky comes in the 6th. And I can tell you this, Licky is definitely trusted by this Yankee team. He has been pitching in big spots. I mean, look, 3-3, top of the 6th, and he would pitch a scoreless inning. So in terms of like the totem pole of at least lefties, we'll talk about as the series progresses, but it kind of feels like he's at the top of the line. And we've seen Licky warm up and be thrown into big situations and has done probably a little bit better than I would have thought. I think he's escaped some jams here and there. It may not be so lucky moving forward, but so far, so good. The bottom of the 6th is when it all happens. This is the inning. So Brandon Bielak is pitching at this point for Houston. Glaber has a leadoff walk. Then Clint Frazier pops out. Then Aaron Hicks singles. And this was a very good series for Aaron Hicks. Someone who I've been very hard on. Excellent series for Aaron Hicks. Gets a single. And then Kyle Higashioka grounds out. So your situation is now 1st and 3rd, 2 outs. Rougned Odor gets a 4-pitch walk. And Brian Abreu is brought in to face Odor at this point. Bielak out, Abreu in. Odor gets a 4-pitch walk. And there were some close pitches early in the at-bat that weren't called strikes. So now it's bases loaded, 2 outs, tie game bottom of the 6th, and this at-bat by DJ LeMahieu was not pretty. It's 0-2, he takes 2 strikes, and then he swings at a ball that was low, but like LeMahieu usually does, he makes contact. It's a slow dribbler to third. Bregman tries to make the play. It was going to be tough to get LeMahieu out, and he throws it, and Gurriel's not able to scoop it. It goes away, and all 3 runs score, including a major collision between Odor and Maldonado at the plate. Odor was safe, but unfortunately for both of them, more so Odor, they would be hurt. Odor has a knee injury. He was placed in the IL. He would leave the game. He's placed in the IL, and it's too bad just because he was providing some clutch at bat. I mean, the batting average is never going to be there with him. You know, if you keep the expectations in check, he was coming through. It's something that you'd rather see than Mike Ford. The good news is Luke Voigt should be back, I believe, on this upcoming road trip. So that problem may have solved itself, but we're going to talk about another injury that may have taken place that I think could be a problem. But Giancarlo Stanton would tack on with an RBI single. So Stanton continues to come through, and he finishes the night 4 for 5 with 3 RBIs. Again, that's just nothing bad to say about Giancarlo. Nothing at all. So that makes it 7-3. So that LeMahieu play was the play of the game. Chaos ensued. Like I said, Odor to the IL, and Maldonado would leave the game, I think. Yeah, he would leave the game, but then he would make his presence felt in the last game of the series. But in the 7th, Loaizaga pitches a scoreless inning. In the 8th, Wandy Peralta, newly acquired from San Francisco, pitches a scoreless inning. And then in the 9th, Chad Green pitches a scoreless inning. So the Yankees win it 7-3. Good job by the pen to hold it where it was, and some timely hitting, and Stanton kind of being the main one. But again, good win for the Yankees, especially the first game against Houston. You really want to make your mark, and they did that. So they win the first game of the series. Second game would feature a matchup between Luis Garcia and Jordan Montgomery. And like I said, Sanchez has been catching Montgomery. So Sanchez would be in this lineup. Gardner replaces Frazier. And Ford is in for Odor, who is hurt. So other than that, nothing too drastic lineup-wise that was different. But in this one, the Yankees would be the team that would jump out to the early lead. And that would happen in the 3rd inning. And a 2-out hit by pitch DJ LeMahieu, and then what do you know? Giancarlo Stanton gets it going for the Yanks again. And it wouldn't stop there. So a 2-run homer for Stanton gives the Yankees a 2-0 lead. But what you don't want to do in the next inning, and I feel like Montgomery has had a bit of a tendency to do that this season, is he kind of gives it all back. And some of that I think was unlucky. The beginning of the inning was unlucky, and then it kind of unraveled at the end of the inning for him. And Brantley would single. Then Bregman hits a dunk single into center field. And we've seen that a lot this year. This would happen in the second and third game where it seems like Hicks is just playing very deep, and I'm not sure if it's anyone's fault necessarily, whether it's like LeMahieu, the infielder coming out, or Hicks coming in, but an unfortunate single. Maybe just well placed by Bregman. And then Yordan Alvarez hits the ball to Montgomery, and he can't quite field it, and everyone's safe. It's a single. May not have been an easy play, but a play that you would have liked to have seen made. Then Correa grounds into a force, and a nice play by LeMahieu even to get an out. It was well hit, and LeMahieu gets the out. So at this point, it's 2-1 Yanks, first and third, 1 out. And then Gurriel gets an RBI double. Luckily, though, Gardner throws it to Urshela, who throws it to Sanchez, and they get Correa out at the plate. So it could have been worse. It's 2-2. And then, unfortunately, Aledmys Diaz gets an RBI double to give the Astros a 3-2 lead. So a really rough inning for Montgomery. But he would settle down, as he also has this year. Like, we've seen that with him and him and Herman, where they've had some rough innings, but they're able to kind of navigate through to keep the Yankees in the game. So, in the bottom of the fifth, the Yanks would tie it up. 2-out rally, started by Brett Gardner. He gets a single. Then DJ LeMahieu gets a walk, and Luis Garcia would be taken out of the game. And it made sense. He had given up a home run to Giancarlo Stanton. He was one out away to qualify for the win. The Astros bring in Ryan Stanek, the former Tampa Bay Ray, and Giancarlo Stanton takes a close 1-2 pitch. It could have been called strike 3. It was close. And then he rips a double to tie it up 3-3. So Stanton added again, responsible for all RBIs in this game. Montgomery was able to get through 6. And I wasn't sure if it made sense to leave him in. They did, and it works out here. So he goes 6 innings. Then in the 7th, Luis Cessa would come on. He would get 2 outs. Then he would walk Miles Straw. And then they would bring in Wandy Peralta to face the left-handed catcher Jason Castro. And Peralta would throw a wild pitch, but then he would strike Castro out. He fell behind, but he gets the big out. And then in the 8th, it would be Jonathan Loaisiga, who's been mostly excellent. Gets a 1-2-3 inning, and then the Yankees get it going in the bottom of the 8th. Brooks Raley, the lefty, comes in, and Gleyber Torres starts it off with with the leadoff single. Then Clint Frazier pinch hits for Mike Ford, draws a walk. It was a good at-bat. And then Aaron Hicks. So Aaron Hicks gets the RBI single. As a right-handed hitter, hits it the other way. The side that he's been better at this year, but I would say in this series, he was good at the right side and the left side, but Hicks gets the big RBI single to give the Yankees the lead. Gary Sanchez would be hit by a pitch. Brett Gardner gets a sac fly to give the Yankees a 5-3 lead. Then DJ LeMahieu grounds out, so at this point it is first and third, 2 outs, and not to be outdone, but Giancarlo Stanton gets an RBI single. So the Yankees take a 6-3 lead, and then Aroldis Chapman locks it down. 1-2-3 inning, 2 strikeouts, par for the course for Chapman, who's been just simply unhittable all season long. Of note in this game, Aaron Judge goes 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts, so it was interesting, and I think fair, because Judge, when Stanton does poorly, he hears the boos, and, Judge is well-liked by the fan base. Here, you're starting to hear, and this is a little ridiculous, but the point is, Giancarlo Stanton has, been hearing MVP chants and, really feeling the love from the crowd, while we're hearing boos towards Aaron Judge. And maybe all of that is unfair, but I think if we're going to just talk about, showing favoritism, if Stanton's going to hear those boos, look, Judge goes 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts. I don't blame the fans for being upset in this nature of the series. So, yeah, not the best game for Judge, but the Yankees get the win 6-3. And again, similar to that first game, honestly, where you get a lot of Stanton. Herman and Montgomery have an inning where they really struggle, but they're able to kind of do what they have to, and then the bullpen really just locks it down. So, very similar blueprint. Now, let's move to the final game. And this one was Lance McCullers, who was the only pitcher that still remains from that 2017 Astro club, and he was a big part of that in defeating the Yankees against Garrett Cole, the former Astro, who was a part of the 2019 team. And in this one, again, Higashioka returns, of course, with Cole on a day game after night game. Makes sense. Clint Frazier is back in the lineup for Brett Gardner. And so the Yankees would take the lead. And guess who? Who starts off the Yankees again? It's Giancarlo Stanton. Homers again. Solo shot. Gives the Yankees a 3-0 lead. Sorry, not 3-0 lead. A 1-0 lead. And then Yordan Alvarez would tie it up the next inning with a solo shot of his own to make it 1-1. But then Aaron Hicks singles, Higashioka lines out, and then Clint Frazier, it's an opposite field two-run homer. So Frazier, slowly but sure, like I said, is starting to make an impact, and you hope to see it. Again, not being a big Brett Gardner fan at this stage, and they traded Topman, the options are limited, so it's good for the Yankees if Clint Frazier can produce. So the Yankees take a 3-1 lead. And not a whole lot happens. I feel like in this game there were definitely some men left on base by the Yanks. It was a rough game. Well, yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to that specifically. But first, in the top of the seventh. So Cole, I would describe his game, he kind of gutted it through. It wasn't one of his best outings, but if you looked at the stat line, other than the strikeouts being lower than normal, he was pretty darn good. And that's the great thing about Garrett Cole, is that even when he's not at peak level, he throws zeros on the board. And the guy that would hurt him again would be Yordan Alvarez. Alvarez homers, solo shot to cut the lead to 3-2. So Cole's line at this point is 7 innings, 5 hits, those 2 runs, the solo shots by Alvarez, no walks again, 4 strikeouts for Cole. So I think Cole on the season, has 3 walks and 66 strikeouts. Something completely absurd. And Cole is at 97 pitches. And I feel like I'm in the minority on this one, and no one made really a big deal about it. I would have had Cole start the 8th. I understand Chad Green has been basically pretty excellent this year. And I know there's a lot of faith in Chad Green, but Green, as good as he is, and again, I would have been fine with bringing him in. I just would have given Cole the opportunity to start that top of the 8th. Chad Green is not Zach Britton. And, Britton is used to that closing situation with Baltimore, or certainly the 8th inning role here. Chad Green, I wonder how many times in his career we've seen Chad Green come into a 1-run game in the 8th inning. I'm sure it's happened. And I'm sure it's not a ridiculously low amount, but not that much. I can't recall that many times that Chad Green, in this type of situation. So, it's one thing if it was between, Cole and Chapman. That's totally fine. You go with Chapman. But I'm probably in the minority on this one, and it's not the worst one I've ever seen, but at the time, it wasn't a second guess. It wasn't after it was fucked up, I said at the time, I would leave Cole in the game. Unfortunately, I was right, and I wish I wasn't, but Green starts the inning out with a walk to Kyle Tucker. You never want to do that. And then Aledmys Diaz pinch hits for Miles Straw, and Diaz hits a shot down to third base. Great diving stop by Urshela. It was going to be a tough play to get him in at first, and unfortunately, Ford isn't able to corral it, and it wasn't Ford's fault, who I will say, as bad as the hitter as he is, he's awful. I think he's down to 0.91 batting average. He actually did make some good plays in the field, but Urshela tried to make the play, didn't work out, and because it goes away from Ford, Tucker advances to third. So it's first and third, no outs, and on this play, Gio gets hurt. In this play, and when a pitching change was made, he would be taken out of the game, and he was getting an MRI in his knee. We have to see what this is all about with Urshela. This could be an IL situation. Hopefully it isn't, but no one really knows right now. And so what that means is Do we see Miguel Andujar, who has been hitting the ball well? Hitting normally hasn't been the issue with him. It's where he plays in the field, and I feel like the Yankees have been trying to kind of transition him out of third base. So there's always the chance that, again, Luke Voigt's not ready just yet. So in the interim, do we see Tyler Wade at third? Or do we see Miguel Andujar called up in a third? And that's depending on Gio's situation. At bare minimum, I would not expect Urshela in the lineup tomorrow night against the Nationals. So, curious to see if Andujar is called up. That is something to definitely keep an eye on, and Gio has been one of the most consistent players for this team. That would be a big loss, as he has kind of solidified himself in that cleanup role. So, it's first and third, no outs, and Maldonado would strike out. So, first and third, one out for Jose Altuve. And I think Altuve, probably more than anyone, symbolizes the cheating for the Astros. It would either be between him, Correa, or Bregman. But I think Altuve, he's been there the longest of anyone. He is kind of the guy. He leads off for them. He hit the walk-off homer off of Chapman in 19. And Altuve, on a full count, it's a 3-run homer off of Chad Green. You hate to see it. And look, hats off to Altuve. Hate the guy, no doubt, but he was getting abused all week, deservedly so, and he comes up in a really big spot and hits that 3-run homer. This is what Houston does. You can say what you want about them. They are a pretty clutch team, and they showed it there. So a 3-run homer for Altuve off of Chad Green. It hurts me that was the situation, and I know Chad Green is definitely a very, very good, excellent reliever. He is. But, it's Garrett Cole. Again, it's one thing if it's between Cole and Chapman or even Zach Britton, or if it had been between, let's say, Corey Kluber and Chad Green. But just in this scenario, I at least give Cole the freedom to start the inning. And if he lets someone on, fine, bring Chad Green in. But I digress. The Yankees would then bring on Lucas Licky, and it wasn't pretty, but he was able to survive any further damage, so it stays at 5-3. Now we go to the bottom of the 8th. Ryan Presley comes in for, the 2-out save. And I haven't been watching that many Houston games, but I guess that's kind of what they've been doing, is going with the 2-out save for Presley, unless they were going to, I don't know. That's what ended up happening. So, Gleyber starts off with a single. So, Gleyber, still no home runs for him, which is not what you want, but he's been okay. The fielding's been better, and he's been getting some quality hits here and there, so you hope that the numbers can improve. Mike Ford strikes out looking. Can't say I'm surprised. He does that a lot. Sometimes the pitches might not be strikes, but it's just what it is with Mike Ford, and soon enough, he will not be on the roster when Voit is back. But then one of the most interesting plays of the game is where Aaron Hicks gets a single up the middle, and they keep it in the infield, and there's a shift on Hicks. And just mind you with Hicks, he went 3 for 3 in this game, and he's above the Mendoza line. He's up to 202. So Hicks gets this hit, and there's the shift. Torres sees that no one is at third, so he starts running over to third base. Very smart. But he doesn't stop there. Because no one was at third, the catcher, Maldonado, runs over to third, and then it's basically a race between Torres and Maldonado, as I guess Presley probably at that point should have went home to cover home plate with Maldonado not there, and it's a foot race, and Torres just beats the catcher. So, for as much as I've gotten on Gleyber for maybe some lazy play and maybe not playing smart baseball, that was great hustle, very smart, and just awesome to watch. And that's something that you would normally see. So kudos to Gleyber to score that run to make it 5-4. Also of note, Aaron Hicks seemed like he was in some discomfort. They said it was cramps. You always got to worry with Hicks. He has an injury history, so that's one of those things again, wouldn't be shocked if he's out of the lineup, but we'll see. But it seems like that won't be as much of an issue as let's say, Gio. That knee could be a problem. And then it leads to Kyle Higashioka, who unfortunately grounds into a double play. It was a rough game for Higgy, and what worries me is if you were to ask the Yankees, like, who would they, all things being equal, who would they rather be the starter? It'd be Gary Sanchez. They don't want to be wrong about that. And so I worry that any struggles of Higgy is going to lead to Gary seeing more playing time. What likely will happen is you're probably going to see a situation where it's a bit of a platoon. For now, I think you're going to continue to see Higgy catch 3 out of 5 days. But all it takes is for Gary to hit a couple of home runs and Higgy to screw up for them to totally flip things. And I worry about that. To be fair, though, I think that realistically, Higgy, the pitchers are going to make the adjustments on Higgy. And can he make his own adjustments? Kyle Higashioka, there's a reason why he was in the minor leagues for so long. I think we're likely to see a platoon in which both catchers are not exactly going to be doing much on the offensive side. I think both of them can run into the home run ball. Higgy has a little bit more of a Higgy can make a little more contact than Gary, certainly. And Higgy does provide better defense. I, of course, would much rather see Higgy. I just worry about if he does struggle, what that might mean. But I hope that they understand that even if they both struggle, I still think Higgy gives you just a little bit more than Sanchez. But it's something to monitor. And Higgy did have a rough game. He took a lot of pitches just right down the middle. So, got to call him out on that. And then in the 9th inning, Justin Wilson comes in for Lucas Licky. Wilson's been a bit of a forgotten man, but kind of deservedly so. He has not really gotten it done. And after this outing, I think his ERA is up to about 7 or so. So Justin Wilson, it's been rough. And I guess with good reason, Lucas Licky and maybe even Wandy Peralta are ahead of Justin Wilson in the pecking order. If they tied this game up, Chapman was going to come in. But because they were down by 1, it's Wilson. Maybe if Chapman hadn't pitched the night before, maybe they would have, against Houston, not minded putting Chapman in down 1 in the 9th. But it is Wilson, and it makes sense. But again, I've not loved what I've seen from him in his return as a Yank. Not good, and I think that they see that as well. So I think we're going to see, again, a lot of Licky. In terms of lefty situations, Justin Wilson, I kind of think is going to be buried in that depth chart a bit because it didn't improve today. It's a 1-out walk to Kyle Tucker, who's a lefty. And then with 2 outs, first run of the year for Martin Maldonado, 2-run homer. And that kind of just took the wind out of their sails. If it had been 5-4, maybe, but that makes it 7-4. So not a great job today by the pen with Chad Green and Justin Wilson. And then we go to the 9th. Brett Gardner singles to start it off. Then DJ LeMahieu strikes out. I gotta say, DJ LeMahieu this year, his batting average drops to 267. He went over 5 today with 2 strikeouts. He hasn't looked great this year. Let's call it like we see it. And I'm a huge DJ LeMahieu fan. And I think ultimately he'll be just fine. Hasn't looked great. Just simply has not. In the clutch, not coming through as much. Again, he kind of gets that lucky hit in the first game. So it's something to keep an eye on because it is a bit of a surprise. I think that this is probably as bad as we've seen LeMahieu, but no one's talking about it. And maybe this will solve itself out, but it's noticeable. And then the game ends on a rocket by Giancarlo Stanton. Great play by Alex Bregman to turn the double play. I mean, an absolute bullet by Stanton. And a really nice play by Alex Bregman. So a very eventful series, especially this last game. And it's always sour to end the series on a loss. But ultimately, you always want to win series, and that's what they do. They're above 500. And now they finish off this 9-game homestand against the Washington Nationals. And look, win 2 out of 3. Win 2 out of 3. Would you love the sweep? Yeah. But it's not easy to do. And the Nationals, they've been struggling a bit lately. The pitching matchups, to my knowledge, are going to be Jameson Taillon versus Patrick Corbin. Then it's going to be Corey Kluber against Max Scherzer, which, that would have been and still will be, but you rewind maybe 3-4 years, Kluber versus Scherzer is must-see TV, but it still should be pretty good. And the last game is Joe Ross versus Domingo Germán. Yeah, so looking at this series, I think 2 out of 3 is reasonable, and I will certainly be happy with that. And there's so much season to go, And I think that we're seeing some good signs. The pitching has mostly been good. It really has been. I think that other than a couple of games here and there, they're getting good enough pitching. And the offense has been a bit shoddy, but we're seeing Giancarlo really kind of putting the team on his back right now, and we'll see if he can continue it. It's been really fun to watch. So could there be a little bit of a letdown coming off of this Houston series? That is possible. But we'll see what happens as the Yankees wrap up this homestand.